InnerQuest explores various pathways through which you can connect with the infinite wisdom of the universe and apply it to personal, professional, and spiritual growth. This program, featuring accomplished practitioners, educators, and authors, is provided by Infinity Foundation, an innovative center for holistic studies and research. We invite you to share this journey with us.
Hello, welcome to InnerQuest. My name is Jay Stone, your host for today, and our guest is Dr. Bob Wright. Welcome, Dr. Wright.
Thank you, Jay.
Would you prefer that I call you Bob?
Yes.
Okay. Let me tell the audience about you, and I'm really looking forward to this interview. Considered a leading thinker in human development, Dr. Wright is CEO and co-founder of the Wright Foundation for the Realization of Human Potential and co-founder and professor of Transformational Leadership at the Wright Graduate University. And is that in Wisconsin?
The main campus is in Wisconsin, and we also have courses in Chicago.
Okay. An internationally recognized visionary educator, program developer, author, speaker, entrepreneur, and consultant, recognized by Crane Chicago Business as a top executive coach. Now, before the show, we had a few minutes to talk, and I was absolutely amazed at your early experiences with some of the greatest visionaries and teachers of the 1960s and 1970s. So can you tell our audience a little about your earlier experiences and some of your major influences?
Well, I was very fortunate to go to school in Germany. Mm-hmm. And Rudolf Steiner, the founder of the Waldorf schools and the Anthroposophic Society, was in Germany. And as a student, I hitchhiked a lot. And I had the blessing of getting picked up by two people who were in his first Waldorf school ever. Mm-hmm. And one of them was the architect for the '68 Olympic Games in Munich. And the other was the German judge advising the Allied judges at the Nuremberg trials. And so this whole idea of human potential has been just a blessing in my life.
Okay, and then you mentioned Ram Dass,
well,
Moshe Feldenkrais.
Well, my wife Judith and I belong to the Social Ventures Network, and Ram Dass used to convene us. And Judith and Ram Dass and I were on the Spirituality and Business Committee. Mm-hmm. And both before and after his stroke. After his stroke, he was somewhat limited. And he was such a beautiful man. He'd given his entire family fortune away for the Hahnemann Foundation. And then he was broke, and he couldn't make a living anymore. So the folks at the Social Ventures Network, the founders, actually supported him until he was on the speaking tours again.
Yeah, and I think Dr. Wayne Dyer helped him out.
I'm sure a lot of people did. I never met Dr. Dyer.
Yeah, I have the good fortune to. Remarkable man, very humble. Also, you mentioned you met or you saw Moshe Feldenkrais.
I saw him work, and then I was also trained in bioenergetics, and I got to follow around Ida Rolf and do a video of her and watch her debate one of the top bioenergeticists in the country about the tilt of the hips.
Uh-huh. Yeah, didn't you say you were filming her?
Yeah, I did a video of her and followed her around for 3 days.
Now, you did the coursework, the physical work to get the PhD, but those personal experiences go well beyond the classroom.
Yeah. I've always been pretty obsessed with the truth, mm-hmm. As it's revealed in different ways, and I wasn't too impressed with what I was learning in college.
Okay, yeah, you and probably a lot of other people. Now, how did you come to develop the right integrative model of adult development?
Well, my work in the human potential community led me to do personal work in Adler and learn ego psychology, Freud. And I had an employee assistance managed mental health firm, and my original goal had been to be a therapist. by the mid-'80s, I'd pretty much built the business I wanted to retire from, and I hired a young, as yet unfinished PhD out of Yale who had time, and I had him do consumer research. And in that time, I had for a while a 2-year waiting list. And
to get into your school?
To see me.
Yeah.
To see me personally. And then we also had a concurrent model of individual and group psychotherapy where the groups were driven by assignments. So you were always learning and growing. And you worked on what we now call more intimacy training with an individual.
Now, the assignments, is that something you still use today?
We have been refining that for decades, and it's really the engine that drives the car for our groups, our seminars, and our individual one-to-one work.
And what are some of the typical assignments you would assign to your students or customers?
In addition to starting out with what you want out of it, probably the most basic one is how to identify your emotions and your internal states in the here and now in interacting with others.
Okay.
And we start that out with a blindfold because most people are monitoring outside more than inside.
Okay, I know there's a cycle in the brain between focusing outward and focusing inward. I think it's between the hippocampus and the amygdala. So biologically, our brains are programmed to periodically focus inward. So it would support your work.
And then there's a whole vocabulary. There's an alphabet of the inner life that a lot of people don't have. And so so that research led to people saying, well, they loved what they were getting, but they wanted to understand it. So we started out having them develop visions in 7 areas of life, and we worked with them on that. And they said, oh man, we're growing twice as fast. And we did some more consumer research, and they said, but you're still not telling us everything. And we said, well, we think of you developmentally. You're like a plant growing that needs more nourishment in different areas that are unique to you. And so then we put together a developmental axis to that, did more consumer research, and they said, well, but you're still not telling us anything. We said, well, we're really existentialists, and we don't care about any of that. If you're living fully present in the here and now, you'll do fine. And that led to the developmental model, which is central to what we do. And what's interesting is fear is probably an omnipresent emotion that most people don't notice. And it's generally like a sleeping dog ready to step up and guard us.
Now, do you consider fear and anxiety one and the same, or a little bit different?
So let's think that the primary principle in life is aliveness. And so aliveness is going to be going on inside of us all the time. Fear tends to have more of an object of which I am afraid, and anxiety tends to be, in existential terms, the human condition. And there are 2 primary kinds of anxiety from the existential point of view. One is existential anxiety, the anxiety I'm alive and I could die. And the other is ontological guilt, that I'm not living my life fully, learning and growing and engaged. And that is where most of your pathological and problematic anxieties come in.
Well, that second anxiety, almost people are experiencing a psychological, emotional, spiritual death if they don't feel alive.
Well, as a matter of fact, that's the catch-22, is they don't know how to be fully present in their aliveness and bring that into being and really be living purposefully.
Yeah, and now I can understand why you consider your work human potential, because you're trying to actualize the potential of wherever your clients or students are at.
Right, and for us, there is what we call transformational principles, and there are transcendental principles: love, compassion, acceptance, forgiveness, and our mission as educators is to help people move up to whatever spiritual path is going to help them to their full realization. So we have 5 to 10% Muslims at any given time, students, and they live their faith more fully. Our Jewish students oftentimes come to their faith again and live it more fully. And we even have evangelical Christians, Sikhs, Hindus, Buddhists.
And how do they get along in the group? Are they competitive or?
Oh no, it's marvelous because everybody's learning and growing and working on being more honest and more present in the here and now.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't require a whole lot of theology and doesn't require a whole lot of dogma. It's mostly who am I right now and who are you and what's going on. So we don't wrap ourselves in our ideology.
Now, you mentioned working with blindfolds as one of the exercises. Do you work with meditation as another way to access the inner states?
So I've been meditating since the 60s. And so I'm very big on meditation. As a matter of fact, you saw me meditating in the car before we came in. And I'm a big believer in mantra-based meditation. I'm not very big on some of the meditations that attempt to empty the mind and stretch to transcendental states purposefully. I'm much more interested in people living purposefully and being fully present in the here and now, and meditation serving that.
Okay. And so, do you do group meditations in class?
I will occasionally introduce a group to meditate and suggest that they build it into their schedules. And we don't do tons of, I have some men's leadership groups that we may start with a meditation. We tend to do more of that on our spiritual pilgrimages. We go to a different country every year and study the spiritual life past and present.
And didn't you just do a trip recently?
Yeah, we were just in Laos and Vietnam.
Oh wow, that must have been incredible. You want to just say a few words about this year's trip or that you just finished, and what's the next trip coming up?
Well, the next trip is going to be Bali and Java, and but it was totally moving. We got to meet with some of the top Theravada Buddhist monks and healers in Vietnam. Vietnam, given that we're dealing with a communist regime, has wiped out a lot of things that are just coming back. For example, there's a religion called Cao Dai that was almost wiped out, that is just now being allowed to come back. And the broadest religion in Vietnam is Mother Goddess.
Wow.
And it's really a remarkable World Heritage, intangible cultural value that people are finding they can use to get the communist regimes to at least not wipe things out so much.
Yeah. I think of the word Gaia.
Yeah.
That I think the Native Americans use in this country for Mother Goddess.
Yeah.
What about your own religion growing up? You talked about how some of your students or clients went back to their own religion. Were you like a seeker in your youth, or
well, I was raised
rebellious?
I was raised Presbyterian, and on my 20th birthday, December 29th, 1968, I was delivering part of the sermon in my church, and I had been studying Presbyterian theology. Very easy to be a Presbyterian, 3 basic dogma. And I asked the congregation how many of them believed, I think it's in partial transubstantiation. About 5 hands.
Yeah.
And how many of them believed in infusion of Holy Spirit at baptism and I think the sacrament of marriage. And only 1 hand went up each time. And I said, and this was during Vietnam, and I said, isn't it interesting, your kids don't respect you when you're all hypocrites. The church immediately went into uproar. Our minister suggested this didn't belong in the sanctuary and took us out, and we talked for a couple of hours afterwards. It's the transcendental truths that interest me and not any particular path.
Yeah. And were you drafted during the
I had a very low draft number, and when I finished my bachelor's in 71, I had a brief exposure until the draft law was ended, and the draft was ended, which I did not agree with anyway, by the way. I believe in personal responsibility, even if I was fighting doing it.
If you were called, would you have gone to serve?
No, as a matter of fact, a friend of mine who wrote my conscientious objector statement said, what I'm really afraid of is he is going to go to jail, so please let him be a conscientious objector.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if you've discussed this yet, but what does your adult developmental model consist of?
Well, there's an Adlerian axis of vision, where people are working towards a vision in relationship to body, themselves, family of origin and creation, play, work, and others, principles in society and life purpose and higher power. They are always working towards a vision, measuring their progress against that vision, and refining that vision.
Is that something hard? Is that something we can put tangible? You know, let's say somebody wants to be happier, you know, if they want to lose weight or want to feel healthier, you could measure that.
Well, that would be a goal, but in the realm of the body, there is a great deal more than the standard fitness of strength, flexibility, blood flow, and weight and things like that. And what's really cool is when people start being more fully alive and more fully present, weight tends to come off automatically.
Right.
And people tend to move towards fitness. And so that would be in the realm of a goal. The vision is kind of an ever-expanding perspective. You know, when we go from Illinois to the Rockies, you get to Denver and you go, wow, those are really high mountains. And then you get to the ones you just saw and you realize there are even higher mountains ahead.
Yeah.
So people's visions tend to really become increasingly rich.
Okay. And so you're expecting that when someone starts out with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then do the students become aware of that themselves, how much they've changed over time or how much their vision has changed?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think about 90-some% of our students have been told that they looked younger. Actually, a certain number have been told that they looked younger. They tend to make more money, get promotions. They take more responsibility. They're more capable of moving into an adult responsible position wherever they are. Not only because of the areas of vision, but they're aware of their developmental moment-by-moment issues, and they're working on developing themselves more fully with those assignments we talked about. And it causes them to learn and grow faster and to be able to establish better rapport with others.
Yes. Now, I've had the good fortune of interviewing your wife, Judith. How important is it for someone going through your program to have their spouse go through the program at the same time, or you know, some friends, some support?
You know, it really is interesting how many couples end up going through together. Oftentimes the second one will come in defensively as they see their spouse learning and growing. More and more they start together and do work together. And I have one woman who had a very successful career in marketing. And she started doing the program, and she spoke of her husband as what's his name, and he talked about her as his first wife. And we dealt with the ways that she was blaming him for some of her unhappiness, and we wouldn't give her any excuses. And so she realized that if she wanted to be adored, she should be adorable. She started taking responsibility for her own happiness, and he started changing, and he's never come to anything we've done until 3 years later when he came to one of our benefit events. And he still hasn't done anything else, but they're flourishing.
That's wonderful to hear. And you mentioned benefit events. How often do you hold benefit events, and what goes on in them?
Well, we do a 1-hour Energize Your Life, Ignite Your World event where we highlight some of our students who are making significant contributions in the world. For example, one of our graduates is bringing social emotional learning into the Chicago public schools.
That's needed.
Yeah, and so they're going to do that with 3,200 students in this year, and they're growing their programs. We have some of our students who share are bringing social emotional learning into Montessori schools. And imagine a little third grade student that says that at the beginning of the year I was like a lifeless doll. And my hole of feelings was all filled up. And she says, and then I cried. And now my hole of feelings doesn't fill up anymore, and I'm helping other people with their feelings too.
And this is a
third grader.
Okay, so 8 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So I think you called it social emotional learning.
Yeah.
And what do you think the key is to social emotional learning? Is it awareness?
Well, that's really why we start with that, recognizing my emotions in the here and now. And if I have fear, to listen to it and respond effectively. And one of the things that the emotional researchers today don't recognize, because they're not developmental psychologists, is hurt. Hurt is a critical emotion because we're always looking to be affirmed by others. And when they don't, it hurts. And that's a very real emotion. And so, but if I'm noticing that, I'm more likely to be able to tend to it and see what's going on in the relationship.
You know, where I think your work would really do a great service is soldiers with PTSD or other people with PTSD. Have you had much work with PTSD?
So in my old life, when I was a psychotherapist, and I haven't been a therapist since '91, we did the employee assistance and or managed care for Neiman Marcus, Borg Warner, NutraSweet. And we did deal with diagnostic categories. As an educational organization now, not doing therapy, just doing coaching and development, we certainly have people who are suffering from PTSD, some of whom are in therapy, and some of whom choose not to do therapy, who would tell you that they're feeling way more relaxed in the world. They're not waking up in the middle of the night the same way. But we don't deal with diagnostic categories.
Okay. All right. I can understand that. We've got your book here on the table.
Yeah.
So tell our audience, you know, you're basically laying out your model that's in the book. Is that correct?
Actually, the book is the result of saying what's really happening beyond our model.
Okay.
And we started out by bringing in an outside researcher. And then this is Judith's research, really, and found that what's common to all the people that really thrive in our model or not are 6 basic skills, you could call them. And so this is, if I said assignments are like the engine, this is like the fuel in the engine.
Okay. All right. And so would you suggest to our viewer that if they wanted to learn more about your work, that particular book would be a good start?
Well, absolutely. It's a good start, but depending on what you want to do in life. Our book, The Heart of the Fight, A Couple's Guide to 15 Common Fights, What They Really Mean and How They Can Bring You Closer,
here's this one.
is for people in relationship, and it takes the work of this into relationships. And it dispels myths of relationship, and a lot of people find that book more engaging because it informs their moment-by-moment relationships.
Yes.
And then they go deeper into this book.
Well,
which came first?
Which I think if you're fully present in the here and now, you would tend to have less arguments or fights.
Or you cycle through them more quickly. Our campus director wishes that she had a video cam on her head because Judith and I engage and resolve so quickly. Because one is we're both yearning to be seen, to be affirmed.
Yes.
And we're engaging for our own affirmation, but we're agreeing with the truth of what the other person is saying. which is oftentimes unflattering to us, but it causes us to reflect and causes us to come up with better solutions faster.
And when you're agreeing with, if I understand you correctly, you would be agreeing with Judith's truth,
Yeah.
she would agree with your truth, even though they could be very opposite
I'm
and
going
polar.
to tell you kind of a longish story.
Okay.
Our second couples workshop that we did in 90, 91. I was working with the guys, and women don't know how afraid of them we are. And the women were working on how they sell out to men. And I had the men downstairs, and we had agreed we'd eat on the fly if we got behind. And we were about an hour and a half behind. I come up, and the caterer has delivered the food. It's in boxes. And I say, come on, guys, let's go. Let's grab some food. Judith says, no, we have to set the tables. I say, horse manure. We said we were going to eat on the fly. And I grabbed some food, and I put it on my plate. Now, my brave guys who are going to never back down together, but with women again,
Yeah.
together are disappearing out the door, downstairs, smoking cigarettes, looking in, and I'm getting madder and madder, grabbing things, and now all the women are with Judith grabbing things off my plate, and I am so torqued. And finally, the fight is escalating, and I say, I feel so humiliated, and Judith said, good, that's how I feel around you all the time. Boom.
The
Truth.
2x4. Yeah.
The truth.
Yeah.
And I stopped cold. And there was nothing else to say. And she said, I'm sorry I haven't dealt with that better sooner.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got onto it, and we discovered there'd been a simple miscommunication. Eating on the fly to her meant paper plates and not having dishes to wash.
Yes.
And eating on the fly to me meant grab it out of the box, shove it in your mouth, and let's move.
And that's probably the source of most couples' arguments, is that they misunderstanding. One person has one definition and the other person has a different definition, and both definitions are right to the particular person.
Well, and we're both learning and growing. So I'm a firstborn son, firstborn grandchild on my mother's side.
Mm-hmm.
Judith is a thirdborn daughter of 4,
Mm-hmm.
very overlooked.
We have
So-
1 minute left, just to let you know.
So her standing up for herself was critical, and me understanding the vulnerability of hers was critical.
And it's worked very well. I must say, Judith had some very nice words to say about you and your work. So we got about 30 seconds. What wisdom can you finish up with?
Well, to us, the whole game is learning to tell our deepest truth and responsibly, and follow that into our highest potential as the loving human beings we are.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Wright. And I know we just barely scratched the surface, and you could teach on and on and on for your students and clients. For more information about the InterQuest Talk Show, Infinity Foundation, Dr. Wright, stay tuned to the credits at the end. Until next time, wish you good health, good fortune, and good spirits. Thank you so much.
For more information about this show, our guest, Infinity Foundation, or any of our other programs, please visit our website, infinityfoundation.org, or call us at 847-831-8828.